It is Monday, which means it's Zen Money Monday, and we're back from vacation, and I'm very excited to share today's conversation with Stephanie and Cristina of Mana Financial Life Design, and that's a mouthful, but really these women are doing fantastic work around investment strategies, long-term asset management. They have a wealth of information and a great history of experience to share with us today, because I know this is an area that a lot of people kind of freak out about around I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I have no idea what that looks like. So I'm really excited to welcome you to the show today, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we always usually start this out a little bit with, can you give us a little background on how you two came together? Because you both come from sort of different areas of what I would call sort of the big ticket financial management world, from an investment management, from an asset management strategy standpoint. And this is the first time we've done a dual interview, so we'll try and keep track for our listeners in terms of who's talking to. But Cristina, can you start out and just give us a little bit of your background before you and Stephanie decided to become a team?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks again for having us. And just a quick background. So we always talk about our history when people ask us about how we got started. We really start with our money stories, and just like a quick background on my money story. I'm an immigrant here to the United States. I moved here early on in my childhood. And upon arriving here, my biological father stole all our money and robbed us of all of our safety and stability in this the new United States. And so I lived homeless for a couple of years with my mom and my sister. Finally found stability in my teenage years. Found a passion to play water polo. And so I actually got a scholarship to play water polo at Bucknell University, where I actually met Stephanie Bucko, my business partner and my best friend. And so at Bucknell, I tore my rotator cuff junior year. So I lost my scholarship. And so really the journey for Mana Financial Life Design really started when I got an email that said I had $100,000 in student loans to pay off.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
We have a whole episode just on your life history. I have so many questions. I'm trying not to derail our conversation. That's a lot.
It's a lot
to grow up with. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so that $100,000 really propelled me into Wall Street. It was one of those things where I knew I had to become the master of my money in order to, get out of that big hole that I was in. And so I moved into institutional asset management. And so my job over the past 12 years was working for two different asset managers. And just a simple way to think about it is we were the distributor of mutual funds. So both at Lord Abbett as well as Russell Investments. And so my job was, in the first couple of years, was to support the external salesperson who goes out and works with financial advisors. Over the past decade, my job was really to work individually with financial advisors across Southern California and Hawaii. And so the aha moment came to me when a dear friend lost her mom and came to me and said, I know you work with so many financial advisors in Southern California. Who would you recommend that you would trust with your parents' money? And unfortunately, I drew a blank. I'd worked with over 10,000, and there were less than 5 that I would trust with my parents' money. And so that was kind of that moment, kind of in my early 30s, that I was like, okay, I need to go back to school. I went and sat for the Certified Financial Planning designation after I did my education for that certificate. And then I also became a registered life planner, which is a subset of the CFP community that focuses on really bringing value to people's lives by really understanding their emotions and their intentions around money, and then backing the cash flow into that. And so that's really my background. And Stephanie is in many ways the polar opposite in terms of how she got to Mana. So I'll let her tell her story.
Awesome. And then we're going to dig into what some of these acronyms stand for and what it really means to be a CFP or even a life planner, because I think it's just this murky area, and I'm very excited to do a little bit of digging into that. But yeah, so Stephanie, so you guys met in college, but did you always know you wanted to work in finance in one way or another?
I think I always knew I wanted to work in finance. I asked my dad in the third grade how to make money, and he told me to be an investment banker. So I kind of went down this path of being a math nerd my whole life, and went to Bucknell where I met Cristina. We became instant friends, and I ended up being like a best friend slash accounting tutor. Um, Even though I was 2 years younger, it was just, math always came pretty easy to me and I loved to do it. So I ended up majoring in accounting and went and worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was super fortunate because I graduated in 2008. So having a job graduating from college was not that common whenever you graduated with any kind of finance or accounting degree. So I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and, whenever I got there, I didn't really know exactly what field I wanted to work in. I just wanted it to be complicated. So I picked hedge funds. And
sure.
Yeah, it's like really just toss them in there. But it turned out to be super interesting, very complicated work. Worked primarily on one hedge fund the whole time I was there, and really fell in love with the industry. Ended up going to work for FRM, which was later acquired by Man Group, the world's largest publicly traded hedge fund. And so I did risk management for them, which meant anything from like making sure that these companies weren't frauds and couldn't steal cash, like making sure it was a sound investment, to figuring out exactly how the portfolios were managed, and then helping our portfolio managers manage these massive hedge fund to fund portfolios. So it was a complicated field, but super engaging, and really, really enjoyed the work. About 5 years ago, I started managing money for people. And that's when I really fell in love with the industry, because it was, able to take a lot of the complicated topics that I had been learning and actually apply them to our everyday lives and actually get to help people, which was something, helping board of directors was a lot different for me than helping individual people. So whenever Cristina and I were, talking from our respective industries, we always talked about getting into business together, but we didn't exactly know how. And then the pieces just started fitting together. And about 2 years ago, I moved to LA, and we figured out how to make Mana a real thing. So here we are today.
Did you
celebrating our 1 year, I guess?
I know.
Ago.
We met about a year ago. We were introduced by another mutual CFP friend, Michael K., who, which I want to get into what your business model is too, because I think it's very different than, what a lot of people are doing out there, what a lot of people think about when they think about like an investment strategist or somebody that they, bring their 401k to or something. But before that, Stephanie, I'm really curious, do you have a family background in finance, or are you sort of the lone wolf being like, I'm a math nerd and my dad said investment banking, so I'll just go there?
That's it. No, my dad worked in the manufacturing industry, and my mom is a woman of many talents, but it was stained glass. She's a flight attendant. So no, it was a lone wolf from that perspective.
I ask these questions because I'm just fascinated about how we all come to, the work that we're doing now. And it's often this, varied road, but a common thread often is, an interest in learning. Stephanie, you touched on, like, I want to do something that's hard, and I think we don't give that enough. We don't honor that enough, of the sense that, we don't want to just do work. We want to do work that is very challenging because it lights us up inside. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think, sometimes we get into the slog of it, particularly around a financial conversation, or if you're in the financial world, in big business finance, like you said, you're talking to spreadsheets and reporting, and you're not necessarily engaging with people face to face, but obviously you still had a passion for that, both of you in different ways.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I was also going to say that Stephanie, speaking of hard work, she is a CFA and a CPA, so a chartered financial analyst and a certified public accountant. And she achieved both of those things before the age of 30, which I find just mind-blowing. So,
and she wouldn't toot her own horn, but we have to make sure that we certainly do, because that is not only a lot of work from a schooling standpoint, but just from a, wrapping your brain around different aspects of this entire financial conversation.
Well, thank you both.
So you guys said, all right, we're going to get together. We're going to provide a service that feels like there's a need here. you know, you touched on this a little bit, Cristina, around feeling like there weren't people who you could recommend your friends and family to. What do you both think? I'd like to hear from both of you on this. Why do you think that that is in the big sort of investment world in general? Because I hear this from other people, I felt it myself certainly as well personally, that there aren't a lot of, it's like this machine and you don't necessarily feel safe putting your money there except you're supposed to.
Yeah, well, I think, so I wrote a blog post about it called The New Generation of Financial Advice. And it really kind of stemmed from this idea that the financial services industry was built upon a different time. And it was a time when there was really like one part of the social spectrum that was being served by it. And that was essentially rich white men. And so, you know, when the financial services industry in the 60s, 70s, and 80s began serving individual investors, it was primarily to men. And women kind of took a backstage when it came to making those financial decisions. And so really for us, we wanted to start a business based on compassionate finance with the understanding that women are earning as much as men, or I mean, at least attempting to earn as much as men. There's a lot of double income households out there. And there's a lot of women who want to take control of their money, but just don't know how. And so for us, that was a primary leading reason why we wanted to start Mana Financial Life Design.
Perfect. Do you have anything to add to that, Stephanie, in terms of your perspective coming in from sort of what you guys do differently versus big traditional, and why big traditional is not, you know, maybe not as comfortable anymore?
Yeah, I think there's this concept of like financial advisors wanting to make finance complicated. And I think that's something that happens, you know, people want to justify their fees. So they try and talk over you or try and use acronyms that you don't understand. And, you know, it's not that complicated. There is a lot of common sense that goes into personal finance. It's just, you know, as a financial advisor, it's our job to continue to remind you of that, because people aren't robots. They're not going to just do exactly what's right. But, you know, I think when we talk about finance, we're all about educating. And it's like, I will teach you about the most complicated type of hedge fund, and hopefully you'll understand it by the end, because we'll spend lots of time talking about if that's something that interests you. And I think we're not afraid to educate and know that, you know, we are adding value to people's lives, both through investment management, through life planning, through tax management, but also through education. And so, you know, I think it's maybe it's just because we both like to educate so much, but I think that adds a lot of value to people's lives, and then they can feel more financially confident. Cristina and I were doing some research about like what brings financial success. And actually one of the largest components of financial success isn't financial knowledge, but it is financial confidence. And so that's something that we focus on a lot.
I think that's huge.
The role of the financial advisor has changed over the decades too, right? So we think about it like in the 1980s, really it was hard to access the markets unless you had a stockbroker. So a stockbroker would have the cutting edge information, right? We did not have, you know, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, the internet really, to be able to give us real-time information on stocks, bonds, insurance, et cetera. So that was the transactional nature of the stockbroker was important at that day and age. In the 1990s, you saw the advent of, you know, mutual funds and some exchange traded funds and global investing. And so I think the stockbroker turned into more of a financial advisor in the 1990s, where you know, people would go to them to get an understanding of the markets in general. However, upon, you know, kind of the advent of the early 2000s, information technology, you know, really pushed all of this to individuals much quicker. And so I think we had to have another leap in kind of the way that we provide value. And we went from kind of investment advisors to wealth managers, holistic financial planners. So for us, it's important not to look at investing in a vacuum, you want to look at every aspect of their lives, including, their money story, and understanding how they were raised to think and act and behave around money, and how that might be affecting their marriage or the way they raise their children, all the way to insurance, taxes, and estate planning as well.
Yeah, I think I love that holistic approach, because the reality is, I think we're at an age where people are tired of the siloing, and there's so much information out there, and there is this opportunity to learn and to grow and kind of have this bigger picture view of things. And in addition, gone are the days where you worked the same job and you retired with a pension and somebody else took care of whatever that looked like. And, so there's a certain level of personal responsibility that goes along with that. And if we're having to, I see this in a very smaller bubble way in terms of let's just talk about business financial management, right? So many people get frustrated having to organize themselves and project manage their bookkeeper and their accountant and, various other people, because they don't feel, educated or capable of being that person. But at the same time, it's their job as the business owner. And I think this takes us to the next step as a sort of whole person. Wealth management doesn't mean, oh, that's not for me until I have $1 million gajillion dollars. Wealth management
Right.
just means, what do you have of value and how are we thinking about it and managing it? And I really like the concept of thinking about, what is your approach to money, which, as you both know, we talk about this all the time around the Zen Money conversation, because if you're really risk averse, then you shouldn't be doing something with your version of wealth that makes you wildly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And I think what people miss a lot of the time is in accounting, there's a pretty clear cut answer if you're looking at a balance sheet. That has to balance. But the thing is, in a person's life, the same answer isn't right for every person because of what you're saying. It's risk tolerance. It's how much are you saving versus spending? You can make two different decisions and get to the same place a couple years down the road. So, for us, it's really talking through those decisions and enabling people to kind of help us decide really what the best and optimal choice is for them, because we can tell you what the right thing is in terms of the numbers, but that's not really the most important.
Yeah, I appreciate so much that that's not the driver of the conversations that you have with people, because I certainly have been exposed. I know many people who have been exposed to, it's that the conversation is just around, maximizing dollars, or when do you want to sell, or, which is a whole nother language that many of us are not comfortable with anyway, and so to be able to meet people where they're at and have that educational part of your work, I think that's very unusual. Do you feel like people are in your industry, from a life planning, bigger picture wealth management standpoint, are moving toward that? Or do you feel like you have hit on something that is still quite unique?
Oh, I certainly think it's still unique. It's our dream not to own the space, ad infinitum, but we would certainly, we certainly want to be the driver of change in the industry. And that, in fact, that's what we tell people is, even if we're not a good fit for you, let us help you find someone that is a good fit for you, that it continues to kind of espouse the values that we believe make up a great financial planner. And so, in my experience, you still have 90+% of the population of financial advisors, even though the regulation best interest passed earlier this summer, they're not fiduciaries. So the vast majority of financial advisors are not fiduciaries, meaning they're not legally bound to put their client's interest ahead of their own. And so our hope is that, 10 to 15 years from now, every financial advisor, planner, wealth manager is a fiduciary. And we also believe in being fee only. So, not charging a commission for selling something, rather charging a fee for the value that you provide to a client's life. So the hope is there's going to be more on the way. And so we really hope to push that into the future for more advisors.
And just so everybody is cognizant of this, I think we all understand this a little bit intuitively, but maybe we haven't paid that much attention. Let's say somebody has a 401k with their employer, for example, just to take kind of bare bones traditional model. A lot of times we're not paying attention to what's happening there. and you get advice that's maybe coming down the pike from, somebody who's, your business's account is them, and they'll come in once a year and say, hey, don't forget to reallocate your stuff, right? Or they'll give kind of a basic model of, investment breakdown in terms of, bonds versus stocks versus, cash holdings or whatever it might be. And again, this is only one small part of our potential wealth picture, right? We have other things in our life. Maybe we own property, maybe we have another business, but just in terms of the investment strategy, those people tend to come in and be like, oh, don't forget to do A, B, and C. Or if you're more active, they're encouraging you to make changes more often because they're making more money when you do that. And so what Cristina is talking about is this shift in a business model, and this is where I want to pivot to what you guys have going on the back end, is really about client focus as opposed to I want to encourage trading that may not be in my client's best interest, but lines my pockets. So with that being said, I'm curious from your perspective what the sort of how it's been to go into the small business world for you guys, having come from the big business area that you have, and then we'll work our way back to what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, running a small business, you've got high highs and low lows. You feel everything because it's really, I mean, you're living and breathing it all day, all night. That you kind of have to figure out your way to shut off because otherwise it will be all consuming. But it also comes with the rewards of getting creative freedom to hire and take on the clients that you want. I mean, I feel so lucky. I get to work with my best friend every single day. That's pretty awesome. But I think one of the big lessons that we've taken away probably in the last 4 months is ask for help where you need it. And it's, we hired a bookkeeper who is a total rock star. We are working with a compliance consultant. It's all of the operational things that I could probably manage, but in the same breath, it doesn't make sense for me to do that because there are other things that are better to spend time on. Between Cristina and I, we have to wear every single hat in the business. And fortunately, her and I are so different that it actually hats fit pretty naturally on one of us. So that's good. But in the same breath, there's only so many hours in the day, and to really enable your business to grow, asking for that help where you need it. I can't say how rewarding that's been over the past couple of months.
Cristina, what has been a sort of a big aha for you in this process of sort of very close partnership and this building that you've been doing in the last year?
Yeah, I'd say that I had never, and I tell this to a lot of my friends that continue to be in the corporate world that are, man, they're sitting in awe watching our growth. And it certainly has been quite rapid. I remind them that it's not all, beer and Skittles on the other side, right? The grass is not always greener. However, one thing that I was very surprised at was how the entrepreneurial spirit and energy keeps you going, because that you're doing it on your own terms. So, not going to lie, there are times when we are both exhausted. Last week, perfect example of a time when I was like, wow, this has been 4 weeks of no weekends. But the opposite of that is the energy that you derive from knowing that you're creating something that can withstand the test of time. And there's never going to be a time where you're going to worry that, you have to do something for someone else that you don't want to do. Because if you have all that energy kind of focused on the things that are going to drive growth in your business, then that's really all you have to do for the wins to keep on coming.
I like that a lot. I think, we all know it's a lot of work. Do you guys struggle with, you both come from careers that I assume required a lot of time, a lot of focus, a lot of hours. Do you find yourselves unintentionally recreating that same space within your business?
I think there's weeks where we do, but I mean, I have to say probably once a week, Cristina and I look at each other and we're like, okay, but remember, this is supposed to be fun. Like, you know, because that's kind of it. Like, we started this business because we like wanted a business for the rest of our lives. So from that perspective, like, you do have to kind of like slap yourself in the face and say like, okay, like, this should actually be fun. And so whenever you start going down a path that isn't really going to bring you ultimate joy, then it's good to assess it. I mean, you can't like change things overnight, but in the same breath, like, it is that reminder, and just sort of being like, okay, well, we're here for a reason to like help people. So let's help people in a really awesome way. Let's not like go down. I mean, I go down operational like crazy holes. So it's, for me, it's good to just kind of say it out loud, and it kind of brings me back to reality of like what's most important about what we're doing.
Oh, you do that too? I also have operational crazy holes. I think many of us do, because it's a fun place to play, right? Our brain gets to be like, ooh, what if kind of stuff, but it's not necessarily in our best interest to spend too much time. Yeah.
The best thing, I mean, it's really amazing to have a business partner that you can like trust and lean on too. So, I mean, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we've recognized, is that like when I'm down, Stephanie's up. When she's down, I'm up. We lift each other up. And we always say, you know, if you're an individual with your own practice, you know, whatever kind of business it is, having a coach or, you know, like a therapist even is just so critical, so that you have this third party who is able to just listen to you, because it's very necessary when you're out doing something on your own.
Yeah.
What's interesting, oh yeah. I mean, what's interesting though is like, because we are business owners, and I mean new business owners, right? We're a year old. A lot of our clients who work in like big tech and big finance, you know, they are like seeking this like, okay, what's next sort of feeling. And what's nice is that we can actually advise them on like what it really takes, because a lot of people don't think about, you know, what runway you really need. It's this sort of arbitrary, like, oh, well, if I have like 3 months of my expenses or 6 months of my expenses, I'm good. But, you know, for every business that you start, that number is so different. So it's been a great learning in terms of, you know, what has happened and like how the numbers actually work with ours versus where we thought we might be. Like that sort of recognition has like helped us actually advise people on, okay, well, you know, this is the like level of stock comp that you've got going on over the next couple of years. So let's actually figure out how to get that, so you have like an awesome runway and you can really take off. So it's, I think it's helped kind of fit, I don't know, maybe a little bit of realism into the client conversation.
Do you find, because I know we were talking earlier a little bit before we went live here about, you know, how you've really honed in with who your ideal people to work with. Of course, that goes back to the sort of like the rabbit holes that we like to go into, and in terms of like, we'll work with anybody and everybody. And, you know, are you finding a lot of people wanting, what am I trying to ask here? Are you finding a lot of people that are looking for exit strategies from the big business version? Because you're working with a lot of people, as you said, in tech and women in kind of big business industry from an overall wealth management standpoint. Are a lot of people looking at entrepreneurship?
I would say that there has become, although there's been a steady increase in the idea of like owning your own life and this idea of passive income, we hear that daily. There is this kind of, there's a realism about a lot of the corporate world, where people realize what kind of corporate perks they receive and how kind of, you know, easier they have it, especially with healthcare costs. So I would say that there is this desire to possibly, you know, move on to an entrepreneurial field, you know, 10, 20 years down the road. But I'd say it's not so much immediately for our clients. A lot of our clients are both men and women, but primarily women in tech as well as in finance, mid to late stage in their career. So, you know, the mid-stage career women, they kind of want us to help them plot out, you know, the next 10 years before an entrepreneurial venture sparks their interest.
Sort of I will officially, quote unquote, retire or, you know, put this version to bed, and then there'll be opportunity. And I want to make sure I have the cash and the wherewithal to do those things.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking about, because between the two of you, there's quite a lot of versions of services you could be providing, given your backgrounds.
Blessing and a curse.
So I'm curious, from as you guys have worked together over the last 12 months, what has it been like to hone? I'm assuming there's been some honing down, and I also want to take this opportunity to kind of highlight what you guys are offering and doing now, because I'm sure it's an interesting mix.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's very much an interesting mix, and honing down, just as Stephanie said, we consistently asked ourselves, how would this feel if it was easier, right? And not just easier for us, but easier for our clients. Back to the educating and getting them ramped up to do a lot of these things on their own, because, ultimately we want that to be the kind of impact we make on their lives, is their ability to feel confident, though they'll still employ us because they want to have that third party overseeing some of those decisions. They want to be able to make these decisions as informed as possible. So, we start with really 3 phases of our onboarding process with clients. And the first one is really visioning. And so it's really time dedicated to conscious contemplation about what an ideal life, both professionally and personally, look to them. And so that's where that whole life planning aspect comes into play. The second phase is really the financial life plan delivery. So after we spend 4 to 5 meetings understanding every aspect of our client's financial life to the inner depths, so that we know it better than anyone else, we create the first iteration of a financial life plan that truly kind of maps out the first 5 to 10 years. We do map out retirement, but the variables there are so many that a lot of our clients in their 40s and 50s, they still can't see that far ahead. So we have those retirement projections, but it's really focused on that 5 to 10 year time frame. And then the last part is really the implementing of the plan, as well as the iteration. So implement and iterate is that third phase, where things change, right? We have, maybe, your child didn't get as good of grades as they thought they were going to get. And so it's a second tier school versus a first tier school, and that's okay. So figuring out, okay, how much in student loans versus parental support, or, any sort of derivation of a life change, we want to be there for them to make those changes. Stock compensation, for sure. IPOs, when clients are preparing for IPOs, we're a lot more hands-on for that as well. And so those are really kind of the 3 phases in the first year of our work together. And then from there, it's a continuous iteration of, as things change in your financial life, how do we tweak that? And a lot of our families think of us as their family CFO.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of pro bono work, because everyone's like, oh yeah, I do this, just help me. Like, Stephanie, are you doing 20,000 people's taxes for free? What are we
That's where I've drawn the line. I'm like, I can't ever do tax work because I'll just do too much, but we do tax planning. So we've found really great CPA partners and work with them so they can serve our clients, and we can be there to make sure that everything's going smoothly. Because that's as a starting business, it's probably not good to spread yourself too thin, but we've really honed in on this financial life design and investment management, and we think that we can create the most value for our clients. And taxes are always changing, and yes, I read the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, a 700-page document, because I wanted to, but
line by line.
But it's for my education and really being able to help people find opportunities, as opposed to thinking about okay, well, I need to file your 1040 or whatever other tax return that you might need to.
Right. I mean, I think we all need to, it's such a good reminder, regardless of what business you're in or what your area of expertise is, of the sticking to the lane thing is really hard. And I don't know about you guys, but it's a constant, I can't, just because I can doesn't mean I should version.
It is so hard, but so true. I mean, we every 3 months, we've kind of taken a step back and looked at our business and thought about scope. And that's something that, I'm so happy we have done, and we will continue to do, because we always leave that weekend of okay, no, now we got it again. It's you have to keep reminding yourself that it's yes, you can do all these things, but like you're not going to be the best at what you do if you're doing all of those things.
Yeah, for sure. We could keep talking for hours and hours and hours, but I want to be cognizant of both of your very valuable time. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up show at some point and dive a little deeper into some of your other great suggestions and what's going on in your business. But I always ask people this question before we leave, and I'm curious from both of you individually what, this conversation, the Zen Money conversation, I think is very aligned with what you guys are doing in terms of trying to create a space for people to feel good about what's happening around their money, whether that's an investment, whether that's long-term planning, whether that's making sure your business is profitable, whatever it might be. So I'm curious, but that means different things to different people. And I'm curious what it means for each of you. What does Zen Money mean when you think about that term?
By the way, I love the concept of Zen Money, Liz. So I think it's beautiful. And for me, Zen, as a practitioner of meditation, means balance. And so it's something we strive to create in our lives every day, as well as in the lives of our clients, by not putting too much focus on any one thing that will create anxiety and or panic attacks. So for me, that's balance is what Zen Money means.
Awesome.
I mean, I have to agree. Balance is the word that came to mind, but it's like make your life fun and enjoyable, and don't stress of the small stuff. Like there's like money is a way to enable you, like propel you to do things that you want to do, but like letting it weigh you down and getting so bogged in all of the details, like it's not going to serve you in that sense. So kind of the idea of making it work for you instead of you working for it.
Staying above the fray to a certain extent. Yeah. I always like asking that question because everyone has some different way to frame it. I'm like, oh, I like that version. I like that language. So thank you for sharing all of that. I want to make sure that people know where to find you guys. We will definitely post links to websites and all of that kind of stuff, but what is the best way for them to connect with you? I know you have a lot going on Instagram, for example.
Yeah, so we have Instagram. We've got Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And so I think we'll have all of those links on the show notes. And any sort of, if there's any specific inquiries, feel free to email us at hello@mana, MANAFLD as in dog.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure that everyone has action to that, because I think the way that you guys do this work is really fantastic. It strips away this uncertainty and unknown of like, what are they doing in the background over there with my money, right? Like the transparency is wonderful, and the ability to really take this big holistic view of what's really happening in your life is fantastic. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. I appreciate you getting up early on the West Coast, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thanks so much for your time. That was really fun.